Just a few decades ago, Iran and Israel were not enemies. In fact, they were strategic partners. Back in the 1960s and 70s, the Shah of Iran welcomed Israeli diplomats to Tehran. The two countries signed secret military deals, exchanged intelligence, and helped each other counter Arab nationalist threats. Israel sold weapons to Iran. Iran supplied oil to Israel when the rest of the region boycotted them. Today, that same alliance has turned into one of the most dangerous rivalries in the modern world. Iran's leaders call for the destruction of Israel publicly. Israel's intelligence agency, Mossad, has allegedly assassinated Iranian nuclear scientists on the streets of Tehran. Both nations operate through proxies, militias, hackers, intelligence operations, and both are preparing for a potential war that could drag the entire Middle East into chaos. But how did we get here? How does a friend become the most bitter enemy? This isn't just a story of political disagreement. This is a story of betrayal, revolution, ideology, religion, nuclear fear, and a global power struggle playing out through two nations. In this video, we'll trace the roots of the Iran-Israel conflict, from moments of alliance to threats of annihilation. We'll uncover the moments that define this spiral of hostility and what it means for the world if it ever explodes into full-scale war. It's hard to believe now, but in 1975, Israeli military advisors were training Iranian officers. The Mossad, Israel's secret intelligence service, worked hand-in-hand with Savak, the Shah's feared secret police. There were no fiery speeches about Zionist conspiracies, no drone strikes, no proxy wars in Lebanon or Syria, just handshakes, oil deals, and quiet coordination under the table. Iran back then was one of the few Muslim-majority nations that not only recognized Israel, it actively supported it. But all of that changed almost overnight. In 1979, a revolution erupted in Iran. The Shah was overthrown, and a new Islamic Republic rose from the ashes. A regime built not just on faith, but on opposition to America, to the West, and to Israel. Within weeks, Israeli diplomats were expelled. Iranian leaders began referring to Israel as the Little Satan, from warm allies to sworn enemies. It was a transformation so sudden, so absolute, that the world is still struggling to understand how it happened. What triggered this complete reversal? Was it religion? Was it politics? Or was it something deeper, a shift in global power and a need to redefine identity through opposition? To answer that, we need to go back in time to the very beginning of this unlikely friendship and its violent collapse.
Before we dive into today's mystery, here's something important. Over 95% of people who watch our videos aren't subscribed to the channel. If you enjoy this type of content, support this channel by subscribing. It only takes 2 clicks for you, but it means a lot to us. It helps us grow, reach more curious minds, and build a strong community around the questions that matter. So go ahead, hit that button, and let's keep exploring together.
In 1948, the State of Israel was born, surrounded by enemies. Every bordering Arab nation rejected its existence. War broke out immediately, but while most of the Middle East condemned Israel, one major regional power stayed silent: Iran. At the time, Iran was ruled by Mohammad Reza Shah Pahlavi, a Western-aligned monarch with close ties to the United States and the United Kingdom. His government, though cautious, became one of the first Muslim-majority countries to recognize Israel. Not publicly, but diplomatically. Why? Strategy, survival, and oil. Iran was a Shia-majority nation in a Sunni-dominated Arab world. It had no direct stake in the Arab-Israeli conflict. Instead, it saw opportunity. As Israel developed technologically and militarily, Iran saw it as a potential partner against rising Arab nationalism, especially the influence of Egypt's Gamal Abdel Nasser, who was calling for pan-Arab unity that excluded both Iran and Israel. By the 1950s, this covert friendship turned into active cooperation. Israel secretly helped Iran modernize its military. In return, Iran provided Israel with something it desperately needed: oil. When Arab countries imposed oil embargoes on Israel after the 1967 Six-Day War, Iran kept the fuel flowing, quietly through third parties and unmarked tankers. But it wasn't just economics. There was intelligence, too. Israel's Mossad and Iran's Savak, both infamous for their reach and ruthlessness, worked together to monitor dissidents, share surveillance techniques, and exchange information on regional threats. Israeli engineers helped build infrastructure in Iran. Iranian students studied in Tel Aviv. Cultural exchanges happened under the radar. And in 1960, the two countries even opened unofficial embassies in each other's capitals under the name trade missions. Behind those doors, diplomacy was very real. It was a quiet alliance, but a powerful one. And the Americans knew it. In fact, the U.S. saw Iran and Israel as twin pillars of its Middle East strategy during the Cold War. Two non-Arab powers that could stabilize the region and block Soviet influence. To the outside world, they were odd allies. But to each other, it made perfect sense, until everything collapsed in 1979. And it wasn't just a political shift, it was a revolution, one that would change the entire balance of the Middle East. It was one of the most explosive revolutions of the 20th century. In early 1979, after years of civil unrest, protests, and brutal crackdowns, the regime of the Shah, once one of the most powerful rulers in the Middle East, collapsed under the weight of its own people. The streets of Tehran flooded with millions demanding the end of monarchy, corruption, and Western domination. But this wasn't just a political revolution. It was an ideological transformation. Into the vacuum stepped a man who had lived in exile for 15 years, a Shia cleric named Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. He returned from Paris with one clear vision: to build an Islamic republic based not on nationalism, but on divine law and resistance to Western influence. Within months, Iran was unrecognizable. The monarchy was abolished, a theocracy was installed, women were forced into Islamic dress, secular voices were silenced. In Israel, suddenly the country that once had a quiet embassy in Tehran was now labeled the Little Satan. Khomeini's rhetoric was fiery and relentless. He denounced Zionism as a colonialist project, declared Israel a cancerous tumor, and pledged full support for the Palestinian cause. Israeli diplomats were expelled. Mossad agents fled. The Iranian embassy in Tel Aviv was shut down and given, symbolically, to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, PLO. It was a complete and total break, not just with Israel, but with everything the Shah's regime had represented. The new Islamic Republic needed enemies to define itself against, and it found two: the Great Satan, the United States, and the Little Satan, Israel. From here on out, Iran's foreign policy became inseparable from this ideological stance. It wasn't just about territory or oil anymore. It was about identity, resistance, and religion. And the consequences of that break would ripple across the next 4 decades. For the Islamic Republic of Iran, opposition to Israel was never just about land or borders. It was about legitimacy. The new regime under Ayatollah Khomeini positioned itself as the voice of the oppressed, the defender of Islam, and the enemy of imperialism. In that narrative, Israel wasn't just a foreign country, it was the symbol of Western occupation in Muslim lands. And more importantly, it was directly tied to Iran's greatest ideological rival, the United States. Khomeini framed the Iranian Revolution as part of a larger global Islamic awakening. In his view, Israel represented a Western outpost planted in the heart of the Islamic world, a colonialist entity that had displaced Muslims from Palestine and that served U.S. interests. Supporting Palestine wasn't just political, it became a religious duty. Iran declared Quds Day, Jerusalem Day, as an annual protest against Israeli occupation. Every last Friday of Ramadan, millions of Iranians pour into the streets chanting "Death to Israel" and burning its flag. This wasn't just propaganda. This was a foundation of national identity. In schools and mosques, in the media, opposition to Israel was taught as moral truth. And while many Arab regimes were making backdoor deals with Israel, Iran was building a brand around resistance. But there was also a strategic calculation behind this ideology. By framing itself as the protector of Palestine and enemy of Israel, Iran gained massive influence in the broader Muslim world, especially among Shia populations in Iraq, Lebanon, Syria, Bahrain, and Yemen. And soon that ideology began to take on military form. Iran started funding and arming groups that shared its hatred of Israel. In Lebanon, it helped create Hezbollah, a militant group and political party that would become Israel's most dangerous northern enemy. In Gaza, it offered weapons and money to Hamas and Islamic Jihad. In Syria, it propped up Bashar al-Assad's regime, creating a corridor of Iranian influence that reached all the way to Israel's border. And so, ideology turned into action. Not only did Iran now oppose Israel rhetorically, it actively sought to challenge it militarily through proxies and asymmetrical warfare. This was no longer a cold diplomatic feud. It was becoming a slow-burning war, fought in shadows through militias, missile strikes, and covert operations. As the ideological divide between Iran and Israel hardened, a new kind of war emerged. Not one of official declarations or uniformed armies, but a war fought through proxies, covert strikes, and regional manipulation, all under the radar of conventional diplomacy. At the heart of it was a shared goal: influence. Iran's vision of the Middle East was clear: a network of aligned governments and militias stretching from Tehran to Beirut, a Shia crescent that would counterbalance Sunni Arab states allied with the West and confront Israel on multiple fronts. Israel, on the other hand, saw this as an existential threat. Let's break it down. In Lebanon, Iran built Hezbollah from the ground up in the 1980s, training, arming, and funding it. Today, Hezbollah possesses over 150,000 rockets, many aimed at northern Israel. In Syria, Iran became the key backer of Bashar al-Assad's regime during the civil war. Under the fog of that conflict, Iranian militias established bases mere kilometers from Israeli territory. In Iraq, Iran extended its reach through powerful Shia militias that challenge American and Israeli interests alike. In Gaza, while Sunni in theology, groups like Hamas and Islamic Jihad have received steady streams of Iranian cash and arms, united by their hatred of Israel. All of this formed what Israeli officials called the Ring of Fire, a semicircle of Iranian influence around their borders. And Israel didn't sit idle. Its strategy became one of relentless preemptive strikes. Since 2013, the Israeli Air Force has conducted hundreds of air raids on Iranian targets in Syria, striking weapons convoys, arms depots, command centers. Cyber warfare escalated too. In 2010, the Stuxnet virus, widely believed to be an Israeli-American operation, crippled Iranian nuclear centrifuges. In response, Iran launched cyber attacks on Israeli water facilities, transportation systems, and civilian infrastructure. This was a full-spectrum shadow war: bombings in Damascus, assassinations in Tehran, drones over the Golan Heights. But despite all the action, there was still one red line neither side had crossed: full-scale war. The question was no longer if they were enemies. The question became, how long can this stay a proxy war before it becomes a direct one? And when it does, who else will be pulled into the fire? If ideology and proxy wars were dangerous, the nuclear dimension brought the Israel-Iran conflict to the edge of the abyss. For decades, Iran has insisted that its nuclear program is peaceful, for energy, for science. But to Israel, those words ring hollow, because beneath the surface, Iran has spent years enriching uranium, expanding underground facilities, and blocking full international inspections. In 2002, an Iranian dissident group revealed the existence of secret nuclear sites in Natanz and Iraq, hidden from global view. Since then, the world has watched nervously as Iran danced around the red line. Enough enriched uranium to build a bomb. In 2015, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, the Iran nuclear deal, temporarily slowed that march. Under the deal, Iran agreed to limit uranium enrichment, dismantle key infrastructure, and allow inspections in exchange for economic relief. But in 2018, then-President Donald Trump withdrew the United States from the deal, calling it a disaster and reimposing crushing sanctions. Iran responded by restarting enrichment. Since then, the situation has become a silent countdown. Israeli leaders have made it clear they will not allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. Period. In 2018, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu revealed what he claimed was a secret Iranian nuclear archive smuggled out by Mossad. The message was unambiguous. We're watching you. We know what you're building, and we will stop you, no matter the cost. Over the past decade, a series of mysterious events rocked Iran's nuclear program. Scientists gunned down in traffic, explosions at sensitive facilities. A top nuclear physicist, Mohsen Fakhrizadeh, assassinated in broad daylight, reportedly by a satellite-controlled machine gun. Iran blamed Israel for each of them. Israel neither confirmed nor denied, but the message was clear. The shadow war had entered a nuclear chapter. Meanwhile, Iran has moved some of its enrichment deep underground, beneath mountains beyond the reach of conventional airstrikes. And so the world sits on edge, because one misstep, one wrong assumption, one unexpected airstrike could lead not just to war between two nations, but to a regional catastrophe, or worse, a global crisis. The Israel-Iran conflict may seem like a regional dispute, but in reality, it's just one battlefield in a much larger global struggle. Behind the scenes, three major powers are pulling the strings: the United States, Russia, and China. Each one with their own reasons, each one with their own game. Let's start with the United States. Since the 1979 revolution, America has been Iran's greatest adversary. From the U.S. Embassy hostage crisis, to decades of sanctions, to near-miss military escalations in the Gulf, Washington and Tehran have been locked in a Cold War of their own. But more importantly, America has been Israel's most powerful and consistent ally. Billions in military aid, advanced weapon systems like the Iron Dome, intelligence coordination, diplomatic cover at the United Nations. For the U.S., defending Israel is not just policy, it's a strategic imperative. Meanwhile, Russia has taken the opposite side. After years of isolation, Iran has found a powerful friend in Moscow. Russia has sold Iran advanced air defense systems, nuclear technology, and oil infrastructure. In the Syrian civil war, Russian and Iranian forces fought side by side to keep Bashar al-Assad in power. A brutal but effective alliance that secured Russia's naval access to the Mediterranean and gave Iran a foothold on Israel's doorstep. And then there's China, less visible, but no less important. While avoiding direct confrontation with the West, China has quietly become Iran's economic lifeline. Despite U.S. sanctions, Chinese companies have continued buying Iranian oil, investing in infrastructure, and trading in non-dollar currencies. In 2021, the two nations signed a 25-year cooperation agreement worth hundreds of billions: energy, tech, infrastructure, and military exchange. To China, Iran is a crucial link in its Belt and Road Initiative, and a useful thorn in America's side. So now the conflict isn't just Israel versus Iran, it's America versus Russia and China, played out through Middle Eastern pawns. Just like the original Cold War, the battlefield is indirect, but the consequences are real. Every drone strike in Syria, every missile fired from Gaza, every cyber attack on a nuclear facility is a message between giants. And that's what makes this conflict so dangerous. Because if just one domino falls, the entire board could collapse, and the world may not be ready for what comes next. For a moment in history, Iran and Israel were allies, bound not by shared religion or culture, but by strategy, survival, and a common enemy. And yet today, they stand on opposite ends of the most dangerous geopolitical fault line in the world. This transformation didn't happen overnight. It began with a revolution, one that replaced royal courts with clerical rule. Then came ideology, turning political disagreement into moral warfare. And finally, it came the proxies, the missiles, the cyber attacks, and the race for nuclear supremacy. But perhaps the most striking part of this story is not how hostile things became, it's how fast they changed. In just a few short decades, two nations shifted from handshake diplomacy to existential threats. Which raises a bigger question: are enemies born, or are they made? Is hatred inevitable, the product of culture, religion, history? Or is it a choice, crafted by politics, fear, and power? The story of Iran and Israel reminds us that today's ally can become tomorrow's enemy, and that sometimes the biggest wars begin not on battlefields, but in minds, in speeches, in silence, and in the slow erosion of trust replaced by fear. What do you think about this conflict? Can a conflict rooted in such deep history and ideology ever be resolved? Or are some rivalries destined to last forever? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. We read all of them. And if you found this video valuable, give it a like and subscribe to support the channel. Thanks for watching.